Hello, this is Glasgow Rangers Nation. I'm Owen James, and this is all your latest Rangers news on what is an actual, official, proper match game, not just a pre-season game. It is a genuine match day. It's a Champions League match day. Hopefully, the first of many for Rangers this year. Look, guys, I know what people say that we can't cope with the Champions League. It's too high a competition for us, etc., etc. But I actually say that's a load of rubbish. It's a load of absolute guff, rubbish, pathetic, just nonsense. Look at Celtic last season, a team that we only lost to once, qualified from that league phase for the knockout phases. A team that, yes, got hammered by Borussia Dortmund and Aston Villa, but still managed to beat some of the teams along the way. There is still teams you can win. There is still money you can make in the Champions League. And you know what? After the draw today, which was made, where if Rangers were to be successful and to beat Panthinaikos, they would face either Servette of Switzerland or Victoria Plitzen of Czechia in the next round, the qualifying round, which is one before the final qualifying round for the league phase. However, if they were to exit the tournament at this stage, they would go into the Europa League playoff, where they'd face either Fenerbahce or Shakhtar Donetsk. Both a lot trickier ties than playing against Servette or Plitzen. So actually, to be honest with you guys, the chances of getting to the Europa League are probably slimmer than the chances of getting into the Champions League. We probably stand a better chance of getting into the Champions League than we do of getting into the Europa League. And I know people will say, oh, we beat Fenerbahce last year. Guys, we scraped past them on a penalty shootout. We were bloody lucky to get past them, to be perfectly honest with you. And Shakhtar Donetsk are certainly, despite the conflict in the Ukraine, are certainly no mugs. A very good side still. So, look, I'd rather, to be honest with you, try and progress in this Champions League. The money's better. The teams look easier. Which is a really weird thing to say in the Champions League, isn't it? But yeah, I don't really want to be facing Fenerbahce or Shakhtar Donetsk over two legs. I think that would be a very tricky tie indeed. And obviously, got a few bits and pieces, obviously, regarding the game tonight. But just ahead of that, obviously, we brought you news yesterday that Rangers were interested in Liverpool star Owen Beck, the left back, someone who I thought would be an excellent signing for the club. It now emerges in this morning's media that those talks that were progressing have now collapsed. Rangers wanted to pay 7 million plus add-ons for the talented young Welsh left back. However, Liverpool were dead set on their valuation of £10 million. He has, of course, just signed a new contract. He's in the process of signing a new contract. Apparently, even though he has only got 1 year left on his official deal, Liverpool are very anxious to actually hang on to the lad. So selling him is not something they really want to do. So that's why they're looking for a premium price for the player. Despite the fact they obviously have Milos Kerkez, they have Andy Robertson, and they have Kostas Tsimikas. They're looking to kind of recuperate as much money, I think, as possible after spending nearly, I think they spent nearly 300 million this summer, which is just crazy. And we're talking about what we spent 16.5, 17 million, been a lot for us. It just shows the gap between the SPL and the EPL, doesn't it? Liverpool, a team that won their league last season, have spent nearly 300 million. Arsenal, a team that finished second, have spent nearly 187 million this summer, and we're kind of bumming along with 17. Shows a difference in levels, doesn't it? But there you go. Anyway, look, so it looks like that one's collapsed, obviously, so it looks like we will be continuing with, obviously, Hefte as a possible left back, and maybe even shoehorning Aarons, who's realistically a right back, into that left back slot. And I've made my feelings clear on where he should play and why he should play at right back. I'm not going to mention it any further. Sick of the Tab fanboys, to be perfectly honest with you. They're like a fucking cult. Anyway, let's talk about tonight's game. Look, both James Tavernier and Russell Martin spoke to the press yesterday, obviously ahead of today's game. And, Russell Martin was quite clear in the fact that, that he wanted the supporters to be excited. He wanted them to see an improvement, to see a different team. He wanted them obviously to go out there and press in front of 50,000 people. Obviously, he talks about them having to cope with playing in front of 50,000 people in what would be no doubt a rocking atmosphere in Ibrox. And I've got to kind of say that when I kind of looked at that, and listened to what he was saying as regards that point, and he said obviously that the Rangers will need to bring the supporters with them, and they'll need to play well enough to bring the supporters with them, which obviously is realistic. I just kind of thought, well, mate, you've put them in a difficult position because you haven't played many games in front of a crowd. You haven't really given these players an experience of what it's like to play at Ibrox. Very often you've played a lot of behind closed doors friendly games, so I think you have kind of undercooked them a little bit. So I think you've kind of made a mistake there, and I do wish that someone in the assembled fan media and the assembled press would have had the balls to actually ask that question, but obviously didn't. Too scared of obviously losing their press access, no doubt. He talked about the fact that Rangers would need to be dominant, would need to be in control, fast, aggressive, and outrun the opposition, and that flavour of outrunning teams has been there all along. He's talked, didn't he, about doing a lot of running in pre-season, and because he said it's about the fact we're going to have to work hard, we're going to have to run more than the opposition, and then when we're tired, run some more to beat them. So I think that's what he's looking for in tonight's game, and he says we want to be dominant in every single game. Now, obviously, I think tonight's game will be a lot more even than games in the SPL. Of course it will. Panthinaikos are no mugs. They're not amazing, but then certainly no mugs. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. Certainly that is the case. Very, very interesting. He's talked also about the fact that what he's seen from his squad in training has been absolutely fantastic. He's been pleased with how the players have been open to new ideas and have taken those ideas on board. And we certainly hope the players have taken on board the way that he wants to play. And I think we want to see the kind of the growth of that style on the pitch tonight. There is realistically no more time now to kind of see it's a development. It's got to be there and it's got to be growing, and that style has to be clear, evident. He's been given the players that he wants to this point. He's been allowed to run pre-season the way he wants, so hopefully tonight we can see that element from his team. He talked about obviously players who were out injured. He said that the only injury worry going into the game tonight was Stella Asgard, but the medical staff were working with him to try and get him available, but I think it's highly unlikely that Thello will start the game. I think if he does feature at any point, if he is fit enough to play, it will be from the bench. He talked about Danilo, who I'm a massive advocate of, and I think Rangers fans who call him dog meat and stuff like that genuinely don't know what he's talking about. Go back and watch his Ajax tape, go back and watch his Feyenoord tape. Danilo is great to work with, he said. He sees the game well and gives everything every season. He helps so many other players as he's a translator and speaks 5 other languages, which is pretty remarkable. So it's quite clear that he likes Danilo, and I think looking at how Danilo's gone about pre-season, how he's come back, how he's worked hard, how he's got fit, how he's run hard, he's scored goals, he's created chances, he's linked the attack well. I think he is the better all-round striker. He's the guy who links the play. He's the guy who works the whole back four. He's got more pace. He understands the bloody offside rule, for example. So I think he will feature tonight, and he will probably start in tonight's game over anybody else. Now, I think that's also down to the fact that players are not fit. Russell Martin did say Cyril, Hamza and JD, referenced obviously Dessers, Igaman and Gassama, are all ready to contribute, not ready yet for 90 minutes, but we'll see them at some point over the 2 ties, and I certainly hope that we do see Hamza at some point. I certainly hope we see Gassama at some point as well over these 2 legs. Not really bothered about seeing the other one, but there's certainly those 2 others. Definitely, I think getting them involved, I think, is absolutely key for Rangers. Obviously, Gassama has massive promise and seems like a very, very good footballer. And Hamza, we know, I think, he's technically very, very gifted. I think has a big future, and I think if we can get him involved, I think he will have some sort of impact in tonight's game. I mean, look, I think in terms of predicting, how Rangers line up tonight, I think it's difficult. I think it really is. I think, James Tavernier will start, unfortunately, and then will lead the team out and will still be captain. I think, as much as I think the vast majority of reasonable-minded Rangers fans don't see his, as well as the fact he's been a fantastic servant for this club, don't get me wrong, in the past, he is 2-3 years past his sell-by date, which, I hope I'm proved wrong. I really do. I really do hope I'm proved wrong. If I'm proved wrong, then obviously he'll have a good game. He'll help Rangers to success, and that's what we want at the end of the day. People obviously will come back at me over that, and people will say, and if you're going to come back at that, just don't fucking bother, because I'm just going to delete your comment because it's pathetic. But But, you know, Russell Martin did talk about James Tavernier. He said James, I mean, fucking talking about first name terms, has been great. I've really challenged him and he's been great. For young players to see an older player ask lots of questions and learn is great for them to see. Hopefully Tav can play to his strength in this team. Now, some people reference that as possible positional shifts for James Tavernier. You know, I think if you say, what are James Tavernier's strengths? Well, his strengths are not defending, tackling, or being a right back. His strengths are getting forward, crossing the ball into the box, taking free kicks, having shots from distance. They are his strengths. You know, his strengths are attacking. His strengths are not defending. He's probably, you know, one of the worst right backs in Scotland, but he is better going forward. So, you know, maybe that's this kind of element that they may try him further forward. They may push him further forward tonight in some sort of element to get the ball into the box early, to create chances or to take shots from distance, you know, to obviously put the Greeks on the back foot. That could well be sort of what he's kind of hinting at with that comment. But certainly a fascinating comment from Russell Martin. You know, it's clear that from those comments that Russell Martin will, you know, kind of follow the record of other managers and play James Tavernier and start James Tavernier. And, you know, you can comment all you want on that. That's fine. But look, I think, you know, in terms of the team that he picks tonight, I think, you know, we've seen elements of that team already in the games that we've played so far. You know, obviously with the fact that Gassama can't start, with the fact that Hamza can't start, that Othello can't start, it is going to kind of change his options a little bit. But in terms of the team, I think Jack Butland will be in goal. I think the back four will be Tavernier, Jade, John Suter, Giga, and probably Aaron's at left back, which I don't like. I like a left footer at left back, at least one left footer in the team. I think that then we'll have a midfield three of Rothwell, Dio, and Raskan. Then the front three, I think, will be Dowell, Danilo, and it will be, I think, on the left-hand side, possibly Bayrami, possibly Curtis. I don't know. I mean, it depends how much confidence he has in Finlay Curtis to come into a Champions League tie. Personally, I'd love to see him given his head. Let him go out and play. He did it. You know, he came on against Man United last season in the Europa League. Certainly didn't look out of place. I think, you know, you've got to blood these kids. You've got to give them an opportunity. And with the fact that we don't have really anyone else at this point, and Nadim Bayrami has been a passenger masses of times last season in Europe, I think this is the time to give Finlay Curtis his opportunity to play. I really do. Look, that's just my ideas. I mean, you may have different ones. Realistically though, I mean, look, Kieran Dowell, whether we hate Kieran Dowell, love Kieran Dowell, say the jury's out on him, whatever you think of Kieran Dowell, I think Kieran will start tonight. You know, Kieran Dowell is quite clearly somebody that Russell Martin sees as an important part of his plans going forward. I personally don't want to see him on a wing. I'd much rather see Cortez out there and let him have a go, you know, see what he can do. I don't think that'll happen. I think it will be Dowell tonight. I think for me that's a bit of a mistake, but I think a lot of it's down to the fact that he likes those inverted wingers, and obviously, you know, Curtis is actually both footed, but you know, Dowell is left footed playing on the right, will cut in on his left foot. Although I must say that Dowell and Tavernier down the right hand side does give me the absolute fear. It really does, but it will be what it will be. You know, look, I've said all along, I don't think Panthinaikos are this big unbeatable team that a lot of people are making it out to be. You know, like I said, I've said numerous times on numerous videos and numerous podcasts, we went to Piraeus, we got a draw with Olympiakos, who are a much better side than Panthinaikos. So it gives you hope going into this game tonight. You know, they're not world beaters. Then I wouldn't even rate them as good as Club Bruges. I really wouldn't. So, you know, you've got to have hope going into tonight's game. And look, realistically, you know, you're looking at predictions that have been made, and people are starting to come round to that, I think, a little bit. I mean, personally, I think Rangers will win. I think they'll win. I think it'll be 2-1. I think they will score, because I don't think our defence is strong enough yet. I think it's weak in certain areas, but I think they will score. I think we'll win 2-1, and then it's obviously all to play for away in Athens. So, you know, in a week's time. So I think that's massive. But as I said at the start of the video, I think, to be honest with you, getting the Champions League is an easier option than getting in the Europa League, and that's incredible to say that. It really, really is. Guys, let me know your predictions in the comments. What do you think the score will be in tonight's game? And obviously have a go. First goal scorer, I'm going Danilo for first goal scorer to shut some of those critics up. Look, you know, whatever happens tonight, I just want the boys to go out there, play well, give a good account of themselves, and hopefully get that result. I think, You know, if it was a pre-season friendly, I wouldn't be overly bothered. I'd just say go out there, put on a performance, whatever the result is, don't care. Get your minutes in your legs, develop your styles. Let's see the shape, and that's the thing I think we want to see tonight: shape, progression, style, and a result tonight. That has got to be the way forward, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know your predictions in the comments. Try to get behind them tonight. Hope they can go out there and get that result. Guys, thank you for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation. If you've enjoyed the content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I will catch you on the next one. See you later, boys and girls.